one thing I've learned. If you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incondescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. And we're live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Zathianchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio in year 18. Feet to the fire live. This is the audio-only version. No need to see my mug today. I will be putting up a bunch of links at the end of the show. I was going to do it beforehand, but time was of the essence. Every time I start to do something earlier, well, it seems like it takes later. So there we are. We are there and live. I'm trying to turn it up a little louder. I noticed last week, and it's funny how this happens. And little technical boredom. You can set stuff up, and then next week it's different. And I don't know how that happens, but it is computers, and you know what that means. So I'm gonna turn this down here. There we go. So today, I'm trying to think of what to talk about or what theme to do. Again, the overwhelming forces. What happened there? Screen went away. The overwhelming forces out there is the ongoing election. Now, it's funny. It really is funny because the people who are paying attention to all this. Oh, there we go. That's going to be better now. There we go. Wondering why things weren't. The people who are worried about these things are watching it are worried about what has happened. They realize what's at cost here in terms of changing the country, the whole dynamics of the country. And it's not that one man is going to do this. It's not that. It's that that person that is not on the medical tyranny socialist system, and so it would be throwing a rock in front of it. But what is happening? I wrote some stuff down here. What I'm seeing is the amazing, mind-numbing corruption in voter fraud. So blatant. I don't know if they were in a hurry, if they were desperate and sloppy, or if they just think they don't care anymore because the media will cover for them. But the audacity behind the blatant, incredibly high fraud is amazing to me. And it's coming out is also amazing. The fact that this stuff was done and coming out. Now, the red flags were there waving. But to actually come up with a lot of the methodology the sloppiness is just amazing. And I'm always kind of looking at people talk about God. What's God going to do? Would God save us? God do this, that? And I have a personal theory that God does, being omniscient, doesn't have to really enter space and time and do much, because the whole programming of the universe was done at the creation. So if you can think of somebody playing chess, they can play out the whole game so that no matter what you move, they have a counter move that will propel you into the area you want to go. And look at it, too, where it's not that God is preparing us and manipulating us. He's getting us to be the best we can be and learn the best we can within our free choices. So God, in my opinion, God enters space and time very rarely. And when God does enter space-time to alter the flow, I think it's because of requests and out of a caring or love for the hardship that individuals may go through and decide to enter space-time to give them an easier course. Now, it doesn't happen a lot, because I think rarely does it come to that point where God would change his mind. And I'm using all these terms with quotations on it because we're talking about a divine being that's beyond our comprehension. However, there is traits, let's say, that they may have, that God has, that can be termed, have a human analog to it. So when this is happening, and I think when you go down the evil path, there is a kind of a normal degradation that happens when you do that. I mean, God is not saying don't go down the evil path because it's fun. Not God says don't go down the evil path because it'll lead to destruction. And as you go down that path, there are probably similar things that happen depending, no matter whatever time frame you live in, and how smart or unintelligent, or how powerful, or how much money, or how poor. Those things will affect it. But I think there are various phases that you go through. And when you hear terms like drunk with power, and being so arrogant as to be not have caution, and so on, I think these are normal things that happen. And so as the corruption in the government, and I could call it the left, but it's not a left-right thing, as we will see when the corrupt right is sifted out. But at this point, it's, I guess, the number and volume, let's say, would be more left. But the corruption is so high and so deep and so complete that those involved in there are starting to get drunk with this power. Corruption does do that. It leads to delusion. And for those who think that they're running the show and they're missing other parts of it. I mean, first off, they're missing the weight of good that the universe is made for, so that the evil will always fail in the long run. Each time, though, evil thinks, well, this time they're going to do it right. Their evil is so complete in their intelligence and whatever, they won't do it. So as I'm looking at this amazing fraud and the complete ignorance of the media, those following mainstream media, and the ignoring it, the media is ignoring it. All it does is draw a contrast and show how corrupt and evil these people are. That when the voter fraud and the obvious fraud gets so big and so systemic and it's so amazing, and they still just simply ignore it, and they think they're going to win this one out. I mean, the thing is that whether Biden is actually sworn in as president, they're not going to win this one out. I mean, you can't win at evil. And what I see happening here in the choices that are out there is that if the Biden sign wins in terms of being a president, then we will move into a type of insurgency where you're going to have the patriots, the people, the Christians, of people of good conscience of all walks of life are going to be on one side, and then the corruption emboldened by now having the reins on the other side, and it's going to get pretty terrible. The people will resist, and they will be mowed down. It'd make Kent State look like a picnic. And if Donald Trump is president, there will start yet a different type of insurgency where you will have Antifa and the like, plus the deep state and the CIA assets who are involved in that, will start start insurgency like you would see perhaps in Syria and Afghanistan, where you have infrastructure attacked, buildings blown up, and more shootings and whatnot. Just like I look either way, I go like, either way is going to be problematic. Personally, in my own ignorance, meaning as much as I know, which I know I don't know, but as much as I know, I would choose the Trump May, because at least the insurgents would be on the non-American government side. I mean, talking about like the military and whatnot. Obviously, the government would be split inside. And there's a third one where Trump is vindicated after the swearing in. So now you have a possibility for two presidents or two sides and the government inside splitting. I mean, if there's a fourth choice, let me know. I mean, other than Jesus returning in the middle of this and bringing peace, I got nothing. So I'm looking at it. If you look at the picture I used in here, I mean, those are basically, all the people are who are in this. And, not to make it the world revolves around the U.S. It just so happens that the U.S. being a big economic and political military power, it happens to command a lot of tentacles going throughout the world, good and bad. But it's also like the last bastion. Like, what country is going to rise up and fight against the world corruption now? Oddly enough, if I had to pick one other country that might do it, it would be Russia, oddly enough, because the Putin Russia that we know now has come out of the very corruption that we've gone into. Now, people just simply say he's a communist, he's part of the corruption. And I, not having ultimate knowledge, nor am I all that read on the topic, if you get out of the propaganda of the old Russia-U.S. Cold War, it seems like Putin has put together a more Western, if you want to use it, or democratic / liberty part than what it was. The United States is the only place that has the Constitution, Bill of Rights, etc. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's other ones that are smaller I'm not aware of, but the point is that if the Bill of Rights falls here, who will now stand for the Bill of Rights in the world? It's definitely not England. They're jumping on people and beating them for not having masks on. Not to mention what's going on in New Zealand and Australia on a similar vein. So the quote English countries are out. So I don't know. And as we wait to look at these things, the news that's coming out is just mind-boggling. I've now officially subscribed. They had a special deal, so it cost me like $1 for 4 months. But I've subscribed to the Epoch Times, and I highly recognize. I recommend Epoch Times for news. Now, very, very alarming is some of the news that's coming out that the judge that ordered them in Georgia not to destroy ballots or reset machines has now reversed it and said, yes, you can do that. Now, how can you have what? for those who think there might not be fraud, what would be the hurry in doing this? Why do you want to hurry to do this? Why reset the machines? Why not have a recount? Why not do it? It's like, to me, it should be automatic. Every time they do this, they should recount. And they should have it audited. They should have both sides. And for that matter, a third party, an uninterested party, if there is one, in there as well. I don't get it. I just don't get other than it's pro-corruption, which means that the huge, the infrastructure here, the huge infrastructure is amazing to me. It's so bad, and the corruption is so complete, and the hatred of, and forgetting the corruption part, or not just the hatred of Trump, which has been made by the media because he doesn't have any of those traits other than, his tweeting personality, but he's not racist. He's done all this other stuff for various groups and people, and the hatred is so intense that I think it's now supernatural. I do think that Trump has made some stance, abortion for one of them, that are so hated by the satanic, and those minions that are in that group are being used to get rid of him. So it's now becoming like almost like an epic battle of something that'd be made in a movie between Olympus, on Earth or something. I don't know. It's just absolutely amazing. Now they have these people. I got to go to my my list that I did here, my saving of the posts that I've done. You have I said the drug judge blocks and then unblocks Georgia from wiping and resetting election machines. That's ridiculous. Trump did a review. I didn't watch it. I read about it, but I didn't watch it. He said that the people were, calling him on election night because it was so far ahead, and then the votes came in. It's just amazing. You have quotes from Eric Coomer, Director of Strategy and Security for Dominion Voting Systems, on an Antifa, talking on an Antifa conference call, which is taped. I'm getting a piece of it here. Don't worry about the election. Trump's not going to win. I will effing sure of that. Make effing sure of that. I made effing sure of that. And he's involved in the system. You have a lot of good news, like this. One of the top guys in the computer security, dubbed the smartest man in the room, has joined Sidney Powell. That's good news. The digital forensic analysis shows Dominion servers connected to Iran and China. It's an affidavit now. These are not just lips moving on the media, MSM. These are people who are signing affidavits. You have people with the same birthdays. You have the people living in the same P.O. boxes now, where they have found thousands of people who registered their addresses illegally in the state that listed their address as a P.O. box, disguising it by calling it an apartment or a suite. And the reason why they found this is the same address is used for each cluster of P.O. boxes. Let's see. Now, you have a spin. The spin is funny. The GOP legislature is looking to override the certification, which is their constitutional right. In fact, as I understand it, in the Constitution, the people who choose the electors are the state legislators. And what has happened with tradition is that they assign the party who won. So the Democratic Republican Party, whoever wins, the legislature would simply kind of rubber stamp the certification made by the Secretary of State. But their job is to examine it. So if there is a problem, like fraud, they can overrule it and say, no, this is a fraudulent election. We think, looking at the evidence, we think that, in this case, Trump won, and they can vote and appoint the electors based on that. That's totally legal. It hasn't been done because the system kind of is automatic drive. So the Supreme Court has ruled that the electors have to vote for who they've been sent there. So this is how it would work. And whether it be Nevada, whether it be Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, all of these are coming in with weird informational problems on the voting. You have the votes, people being handed. These are all affidavits, sworn affidavits now. They've been handed stacks of votes that look to have been printed out perfectly pristine, like if you took a ream of paper and handed it to somebody. Not been handled, many of which just have the president on it, just have Biden on it. You have this going through the system. You have people who are not Republican Democrat, but they're systems analysts in cybersecurity and whatnot, saying that these anomalies are completely outrageous. The odds of it happening are bad, and so on. And we also have, at the same time, we have this crunch coming on, no doubt purposely, with COVID, COVID measures by the states that are crushing states again. You notice that they're blue states, they're Democratic states, crushing, using excuses with it. You see this on all ends happening. And then in the middle of this, you have people like Sidney Powell standing up, and I can't think of the other guy's name. They're standing up there, and they have gobs of all this evidence, and it's going through the courts. That stuff is working out. It's going to go to Supreme Court, and probably the Supreme Court are going to have to rule, and I don't know how they'll do it. They'll have to rule that there was fraud in there. Now, what's the remedy from all of this? Well, on one side, they could say, it's too big to fail. We can't do nothing about it now. We got to let it go and work on it for next time. Right? These are all my opinions, how I see it. They can rule out, they can throw out certain votes, certain percentage of votes. They can peel off, 10,000 from Biden or whoever, and come out with a state number. They can tell you to do over and have it done. There's a number of ways that can be done. We're looking at U.S. history. We're looking at this never happened before to this degree, and so we're going to have to look for it. But meanwhile, the thing that bothers me as it'd be like if you're going to you bet on a contest, right? And your options now are you're not going to win the grand prize. You've already lost that part, where everything's nice and fine. But your options are okay, bad, and worse. And you're sitting around wondering which one's going to be. And you don't even know how it will fold. You can, all these things are guesses. All this stuff I'm talking about, I'm looking forward and in the future using kind of an informed guess based on the options that are available. And there's always that left field part that could come in and change it. But this is what I think is going on here is God's not going to come out of the sky and say, that's it, I'm taking over. Or, Jesus is going to return. I would love that. But it doesn't seem like that's the system. The system that God made works is on itself, and the evil will manifest itself, and those will reject it, and the conflict that comes out of it. But since it's so worldwide, and since the weapons they're using now are so tremendous, I mean, back in the Revolutionary War, when Britain sailed over to fight the Americans, they didn't really have anything that the Americans didn't have. I mean, they had cannons, muskets, knives, bayonets, and, that's pretty much it. Now you have infrared cannons that can fry you. A person on the street protesting or whatnot. I mean, so it's amazing to me. And the people who are not paying attention and going on with their life and not matter, doesn't matter. You look at him and you go I don't know, who's the fool? Somebody who's watching all of these things happen, watching, it's like watching in slow motion as the projectile comes closer towards you and you're watching it, and then it hits you, and it's like, wow. so your last moments of your freedom or life were spent watching it end, let's say, or the person who doesn't care and is living their life willy-nilly, and then they get knocked off knocked off the pedestal or what have you, knocked off their bicycle as they pedal along. And it's very upsetting. Now, what helps me, and it could be called, in the left or atheistic people might call it a delusion, as I look at God and in the history of other events that has happened, and those who stand for right, doesn't mean some people are going to be murdered, some people are going to be greatly discomforted, some will get by, though it'll be unpleasant, but you have to kind of let it play out. It seems like, and I've said it before, people have been listening to the show for a while, we're in a time of the revealing. The purpose right now is the revealing of corruption, the depth, the breadth, the people who were in it, the surprise of people you thought that were okay or not. Those who've been working on your side or your friends turn out not to be. That's the point of now. And if you look at that as the point of things are happening, things are going well. The depth and breadth of the corruption is being exposed in this election in particular because of how bad it has been. And the media completely ignoring all of the evidence, criticizing it even, pushing to have Biden canonized as president. And you see it. And I'm sure people are seeing this as they wake up. Those who are completely deluded, they're, they may not wake up until it's too late. But so all in all, you have to say that if the goal of revelation is the goal, if the end goal is revelation, it is proceeding as planned. It's uncomfortable for those of us in the mechanism, in the soup, so to speak, as it's being turned and exposing. But this is not unusual for past practices, if you want to look at the Bible for examples. So as I I could sit and quote all the stuff that's coming out. All the stuff that's coming out, it is good news for proving the fraud. All the evidence they got coming out, the experts who are swearing to it, all of the eyewitness people in all of these states, the software problems, which I've not seen the evidence for that yet, but I'm sure that's going to be laid out. The experts who are in the industry are saying their software. All this stuff is, I would rather be on Trump's side than Biden's side with the evidence, with what's coming out. What the problem is whether or not the justices and justice will prevail for what's right. This is what we're all waiting for. And it's just like, we were looking at the election. Well, when the election comes, we'll know, and at least it'll be over. So you're kind of treading, you're like treading on water. You're holding your breath. And well, at least with the election, we'll know, we'll have a better idea. And it's even worse now. So we'll have to see how things are going and where they go to. At some point, there's going to be a decision made. And I think there's probably a battle between good and evil behind the scenes as to where this path will go to. But no matter what the outcome is, God will prevail in the end. The good, the plan will prevail in the end. It's just what methodology is really what's at stake now. Are we going into the, an end time scenario, or are we going to go into some type of revival and it will, the end time scenario will cycle back for another time? Either way, the end is good, even though it's quite nasty as it's going. The whole COVID thing is another, we got this election in the background, but the whole COVID thing is going on. And you have revelations coming out. I got to scroll past it again. Excuse me. And I have sciencemag.org. I have the Science Mag. This is what the magazine is saying. There's a person who had it. This Luke Hutchinson had a Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. With the second injection, his arm swelled up the size of a goose egg. Hutchinson said he can't be sure if he got the vaccine or if it was not a placebo, but within a few hours, Hutchinson, who was healthy and 43, was beset by bone and muscle aches, a fever, started to shake, was hot and cold rushes, was wondering if he should go to 911. And this magazine article is saying that, you should prepare people for the side effects of this. I'm like, oh, gosh. And then you have a Serum Institute's COVID-19 vaccine triggers, quote, behavioral change in participant. The drug regular is silent. You have an interview, which I've yet to see, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Ben, gosh, I can't think of his name now. I'm looking at his face. There it is, Ben Swan. I found the article. He did an interview on RT. Of course, RT is immediately Russian in disinformation, right? So you can't count anything they're saying, especially since it goes against the COVID stuff. But it's here for those who are open to look for evidence. I'll look at evidence wherever it comes from. And true is true and right is right, regardless. So there's extra boxes that are come there. People have said testimony. I mean, it's so obvious. And for me to go over the details of it, there's many people doing a better job than I could do. I'm just trying to give a commentary on the picture of it all. The big picture, the middle picture, and the small picture of individuals involved with it. Another thing about the whole COVID kind of scam to it is that the statisticians looked at the data analysis that the number of deaths from COVID is not alarming. In fact, the United States has relatively no effect on death rates. So with the 200,000 people that died, allegedly under Trump's miscalculations, according to the left, the overall death rate has not really changed. Also, they're not counting. They decided not to count flu this season because of COVID. So now, how many flu people are? How many COVID is really flu? Since the symptoms are the same. Also, there's been a article coming out here. This is a CDC report. Okay, the CDC report, as reported by NPR, not exactly the most conservative right-wing organization. Officials knew corona test was flawed, but released it anyway, because the goal is they want to get positives. They can't show the death rate to anymore because it's fallen. They're receding old folks' homes and whatnot, nursing homes and whatnot, is done now, so they can't come up with big numbers. So now they're going to come up with big infection tests and ignore the rates of people who are living. I mean, I have access to family members, their extended family work in hospitals. And they're saying, yes, there's more COVID people coming in than it has been in the last several weeks. My response is, how many are in intensive care? Well, there's a lot less intensive care. People are coming in and they're staying for a few days, and going home because they're coming in, they've been tested positive. They may have some symptoms and they're worried about dying. So they come to the hospital and their body naturally goes through the system and they get okay and then they leave. But that number is growing. But you have to analyze the numbers to find out the quality of the numbers and what is actual reality, not just the number. But if you want to push and you want to lock down and you want to scare people, of course, you just say, oh, the numbers are higher. I can't believe how high it's going. So you have the president, the election, and a massive fraud and that. And then you have the COVID going on at the same time. 1 second. I was actually sick for a week. Only a couple days ago, I felt better, but I probably had intestinal flu. No COVID symptoms. My lungs were clear. Wasn't coughing, no sore throat. And I I went through it all. Of course, where I'm driving, I'm in my own truck. I don't go by anybody, so I wasn't around anybody to affect them anyway, staying in distance. But I was thinking, like, boy, I better not get too sick because I don't want to go to a hospital with this because they're COVID crazy, looking for COVID people. And with the test being not being accurate, of course, anybody who shows up and takes a test, there's a chance they'll be positive. And if they're positive, then holy cow, you have to stay at home for 14 days and then be retested again. And it's terrible. And the goal really of it, besides a medical tyranny, to get you to wear a mask and to behave how you're told. That's the training that's coming out of this. Wearing the mask is not the goal. It's a method for the goal, which is training us like mice in a trap, in a maze. So by doing this, they're getting us to do these things, and are also crushing small business. Because the goal here, if you look at the results, you can trace it back to the goal, regardless of what they say. And the goal here is you want to have big business and the government telling you what to do as the goal. And they want to get rid of any type of American traditions, Christian traditions, the Bill of Rights, by stopping people from going to church and whatnot under the auspices of health reasons. And luckily, you could see the advantage of having a constitutionalist in the majority, to depend on the John, I'm seeing his face now, Roberts. You don't depend on him now because he votes with the other side. And there was a case in New York of people being prevented from going to church, went to Supreme Court, and the breaking vote was Barrett saying that you can't, that those people cannot break the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Now, Cuomo says, well, it doesn't matter now because those places aren't bad anymore and they're open. But it does matter because now you have a constitutional the Supreme Court has made a ruling on curtailing religious institutions for COVID or other health things. And it's been already taken there, and no, you can't do that. So this is a great precedent. Now, other places, other states should be able to just simply go to court and refer to this. And it should be easier to do. Of course, with corruption and plans, it may make it harder. It may turn around and say the lower courts may say, well, no, it's different. It was a special case. And it has to work its way up. But that is a good victory on that aspect. It's interesting when I see other people in the media, like Lee Camp is one that I like. However, he's very progressive, and in a sense where if you're too tied to a particular ideology, you miss the forest through the trees. So if someone says to me, are you a conservative, a Republican, a liberal, or progressive, and all that, I'm none of those. I mean, I would say that I follow the teachings and principles of Jesus Christ, and that the Constitution was based on those. And so I am a constitutionalist and a Christian. Now, where I end up politically is based on what party lives by those things. And so, I've been residing in the conservative/Republican party by default, more into a libertarian. And I said Ron Paul's the first person that I actually actively supported for a political office. Got signatures for him, donated to his campaign because of what he was saying. So when someone says, well, you're a Trump supporter, well, I support Trump in that he supports what I support and believe in. And nobody out there is going to be 100% where I think should be, and nor am I the be all end all that decides what everybody should be. But I do want to say I'm pretty, the Epoch Times, I'm pretty liking them. The one thing with the Epoch Times is their history started as being an anti-Chinese communist group that came out of China to help expose China's influences in America and other countries. This is where it started, and it branched out into freedom in general. So when you read the Epoch Times, you're going to see them talking about China, referring to the CCP, because their incarnation was anti-communist China. However, since communist China does not stand for anything I stand for or I think is right, I got no problem with that position. But that's their bias, if you want. And to me, that bias does not harm anything other than perhaps the number of articles based on China. But that was their inception, to help people who left China and whose parent, his family is hassled, and also in other countries they have agents that hassle them. You can't come out and say anything against China and not be reprimanded in that group. So, with that being their the bias, if it's a very good system. They do allow a lot of stories to come out for free because they have to live somehow. It's not it's not free to have their paper. In fact, they do have a paper. I was out last week in the store, and I noticed there was one paper. I couldn't see the headlines, the title of the paper. There was one paper in the stack covering the fraud, voter fraud. And I was like, wow, what paper is that? I pick it up, and here it is, the paper version of the Epoch Times. I'm like, well, see, there you go. That might be one of the semi-mainstream, if you want to call it, article. I'm sure it's not a mainstream, but it's, it's in there with them. It's not like me talking on here or somebody having a website. They're actually out there. One American News Network has been very good. Also, I'm looking at a new place, and of course, I can't remember the name of it. NDD and News. Well, let me see. I can find out real quick. Since I started talking this, I saved some of their stories, but I'd have to scroll down just to see if I can find it real quick. I'm doing this because it's worth. I should have hit it upright at the time, but it's worth looking into. NTD. All right, I'll just go to YouTube and find it if it's still there, if they're still on there. Let me take this time to mention that I do have a Gab account, F2F, at F2F, the number 2, F2F. And I do like it a lot. It's run by one guy, and he's hired others now. They're making this step, and it's really good, and it's really open to freedom of speech without censorship. And so to me, it would be the place I would hang my hat, and I'll probably get thrown out of the other ones at some point, and I'll have to make my all right. Gosh darn. Any other time there's 150 videos by them, and NTD. There we go. NTD. I looked it up on YouTube, and you can find them. They've been doing full-blown news reports as well as small ones along the way, and it looks pretty good. It's got 802 subscribers. NTD's mission is to uplift and inform society by publishing quality content that embodies integrity, dignity, and the best of humanity. Okay, it's cable, Verizon, FiOS, it's channel 158. And it's not going to be in the other ones. So ntd.com would be the place to find them. And they've been pretty good, along with, of course, the One American News Network and various independents that have been coming up doing things. It's just the stakes are so high in this. I'm trying not to look at the stakes, but it's very hard to not. I mean, I'm looking at the possibility of a forced vaccination, which I won't take, and then therefore I'll be lost a job and house and end up in some kind of COVID ghetto. That's just one of the scenarios. Other ones would be riots that come out up and down the streets to cause all kinds of problems there. I've applied for concealed carry, but it hasn't been awarded yet because there's a backlog in our state because our state is anti. Illinois got one of the stiffest gun things. It's a lot of stuff going on, and it's getting me, it's definitely gets my attention. And I try to stick around other things out of that. So I'm looking, if there's anything else to say. There's a lot of comments I put up there which are nice to read. I don't know, they're newsworthy. Interesting Twitter blocks links to Sidney Powell's legal defense fund. Grants is potentially harmful. I mean, again, looking at the goal of making a stand, coming out and making a stand, revealing the true sides. Do we need? How much more has to be revealed to show how corrupt it is? Look in the Republic. Where's Pence? Here's the vice president. Is he sticking up for the president? Silent. Total silence on this because he wants to play the game afterwards. And if he becomes the voters are fraud and all this stuff, he gets lumped. He gets knocked off the Rhino, never Trumper Republican list for future endeavors. So he's making, people like that are making themselves known. Here's a quote I came up with, talking about God and space-time. Irony, coincidence, and serendipity are the fingerprints of God in space-time. Because I think what happens is these things are coordinated to be there at the right time. Now, you may make a different choice, and so you won't be in a position for that serendipity or coincidence to affect you because you've made a choice to go somewhere else. But knowing all the choices, those same items are waiting for you on another path you may choose. And depending how you choose, you may end up having some, negative irony or coincidence or, in your travels. So it's best to pray and get yourself hooked on to an inner guidance, a spiritual guidance, and get your head wrapped around the principles that Jesus taught. See, I look at Jesus as he came talking to the person, the mind, the consciousness, the waking consciousness. The Holy Spirit works through the soul, through the subconscious, that aspect. So it's like Holy Spirit works from within. Jesus' teachings work from without. It works into your head. It works into your ears. That's why I like to read or say it or talk about it, because the principles are being brought into space-time, into humanity, out from a mouth and a brain, into an ear, into a brain. That's how those teachings work. And then it also helps allow the principles come into your mind from the inside through the Holy Spirit working. So that's kind of like that inside-outside type of deal. If you could bridge that, which Jesus did, Jesus the human did that to allow, God, the Spirit of God to come into the Jesus the human. So you have that Jesus being a great example of how can you see God on earth? Well, Jesus, because God can't appear on earth because he's obviously beyond physical representation. And Jesus represented, and there's maybe other people who did a good job as well in letting that Spirit go up that weren't as famous, but that's how we do it. That's why Jesus says all of us can move mountains and, heal people and do all this stuff, because that power resides within us if we would allow it to manifest out. And to do that, you have to allow your brain and your consciousness on the awake side to embrace the principles and the goodness and staying away from the sins and the badness that will ruin you, to allow that to flourish and blossom. That's why it's good stuff. That's why when you read it, it's good stuff. If people don't want it and they embrace evil, or they don't want to deal with the good, when they read it, they're uncomfortable, because that spirit is within all of us trying to work its way out. And when you start reading that stuff, you're creating like a conduit into the subconscious from the conscious, and allows it to come out. So it might be a really good time to start. If you got I got the Bible on a CD now. I had it on cassette and wore them out. I had to buy more cassettes, and I have it on CD, the NASB with Red Jeffries. I like it because it's just tradition. I've had him read it on cassettes, and now I got them on MP3s, or I wrote them, and I can just pull out the Gospels. In particular, you go to Sermon on the Mount, and going to Matthew 24 and 25, I like those and associated with the other ones. Good stuff. So I think I'm going to let it go at that. I think I've covered what I wanted to, at least in principle. You have to kind of really not look too closely, because you can go crazy, but pay attention, because in the time, people will be revealed of their true character, and governments and companies and all this other stuff. This is the time of the revealing, and we're going to move into an overlap, which has already started, which is a time of people are going to step up for the principles, and people are going to step down. So like it's a revealing, and there's like a parting. There's like you got to make a choice. And then there's that wheat and chaff thing. And then once that's done, then it can go into the final stage. And if it ends up being revival, fine. If not, then we go into the end times. Oh, there you go. And I guess I'm going to leave it at that. God bless you all. And we'll be here. Throw my 2 cents in. I hope I am giving some help here. I don't scour. I'm not a news reporter. I'm more of a spiritual commentator. I don't know how else to say it. And I'm hoping that what I'm saying does help in some ways. God bless you all, and we'll see you on the next time. So just hang in there and keep on keeping on.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.